Close your eyes and imagine the world in the late 1960s, a time of uncertainty, competition, and dreams that felt both exhilarating and impossible. The moon, glowing quietly above us every night, had always been a symbol of mystery and longing. For centuries, it had inspired poets, scientists, and dreamers alike. But in 1969, something extraordinary happened. Humanity reached for the moon, and, for the first time in history, touched its surface. This is the real story behind the moon landing, told simply and directly so you can drift off tonight informed, inspired, and maybe even a little awed by what humans can achieve together. First, let's rewind to the context. After World War II, the world was split between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. They competed fiercely, not just in politics and military strength, but also in science and technology. This rivalry became known as the space race. In 1957, the Soviets shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, into orbit. The message was clear. If they could put a satellite in space, they could reach anywhere on Earth. The United States felt challenged, and this set off a cascade of innovation and ambition. President John F. Kennedy, sensing the urgency and importance of space exploration, declared in 1961, "We choose to go to the moon, not because it was easy, but because it was hard." This was a promise to do something no one had ever done, a promise that would push the boundaries of science, engineering, and human courage. But what did it take to actually land on the moon? Imagine the complexity. This wasn't just a matter of building a rocket. It meant inventing entire new systems. Rockets had to be powerful enough to escape Earth's gravity. Astronauts needed suits that could withstand the vacuum of space, the harsh temperatures, and the unknown dangers of a world no human had ever set foot on. Computers at the time were far less powerful than the phone you might have in your pocket right now. Every calculation, every plan, had to be made with caution, precision, and a willingness to face the unexpected. The Apollo program, NASA's project to reach the moon, became a massive endeavor. Think of it as the world's largest team project. Engineers, scientists, technicians, and astronauts worked together, often around the clock. Mistakes could mean disaster, and every test was a reminder that failure was always possible. Before Apollo 11, there were other missions, each one inching closer to the goal. Apollo 1 ended in tragedy, with a fire during a test that killed 3 astronauts. It was a sobering reminder of the dangers, and it forced NASA to rethink safety, protocols, and engineering. But they did not give up. Each subsequent mission, Apollo 7, Apollo 8, Apollo 9, Apollo 10, tested new technologies and procedures. Apollo 8 was the first to orbit the moon. Apollo 10 was a dress rehearsal for the landing, coming within a few miles of the surface. Every step was a lesson. Every setback a push to try harder. Then came July 1969. Apollo 11 was ready. The crew, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. 3 men, each with a specific role. Armstrong, the commander. Aldrin, the lunar module pilot. Collins, the command module pilot who would stay in orbit. Picture the launch. The Saturn V rocket, taller than a 30-story building, roaring to life and lifting off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Hundreds of thousands watched in person, millions more on television. It was a moment of hope and nerves. After days in space, the crew reached lunar orbit. Collins remained in the command module, orbiting the moon alone, responsible for bringing everyone home. Armstrong and Aldrin climbed into the lunar module, Eagle, and began their descent. Imagine the tension. As the Eagle approached the surface, alarms sounded, computers overloaded. Armstrong took manual control, searching for a safe spot to land amid rocks and craters. With only seconds of fuel left, he found a flat area. The Eagle touched down. Armstrong's voice crackled through the transmission. "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." It was July 20th, 1969. The world held its breath. Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface, uttering words that would echo through history. "That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Aldrin followed, describing the landscape as magnificent desolation. They planted an American flag, collected samples, and conducted experiments. For over 2 hours, humans explored another world. But the real story goes deeper than just the facts. The moon landing was a triumph of teamwork, resilience, and collective vision. It wasn't just about beating the Soviets or planting a flag. It was about pushing the limits of what people believed was possible. The Apollo program employed over 400,000 people. Every bolt, every wire, every calculation mattered. Each person played a role, from the janitors who kept the buildings clean to the mathematicians who plotted the course. The human element is what stands out. Imagine the pressure on Neil Armstrong. One wrong move, and he might not return. Buzz Aldrin had to troubleshoot equipment, making decisions in seconds that would affect his survival. Michael Collins, orbiting alone, knew that if anything went wrong on the surface, he would be forced to return to Earth alone. The astronauts trained for years, physically, mentally, emotionally. They learned to work in zero gravity, to fix problems on the fly, to stay calm in the face of danger. But behind the scenes, there were thousands of stories. Engineers like Margaret Hamilton, whose software kept the lunar module from crashing. Technicians who worked sleepless nights to test and retest every system. The families who waited anxiously for news. The politicians who debated funding and vision. The scientists who dreamed of what could be learned from lunar rocks. And then there was the public. For a brief moment, the world was united by wonder. People of every nation tuned in, holding their breath as humans stepped onto another world. It wasn't just an American achievement. It was a human achievement. Yet there are details you might not know. For instance, the lunar module was so fragile that Armstrong and Aldrin worried it might not launch them back to the command module. If it failed, they would be stranded on the moon. Nixon, the US president at the time, even had a speech prepared in case they didn't return. Every minute on the surface was a race against time and risk. The technology was astonishing, but also limited. The computers that guided Apollo 11 had less power than a modern calculator. Navigation was done by hand, using slide rules and charts. Communication was patchy, delayed by seconds. Every step was a leap into the unknown. After their time on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin climbed back into the lunar module and blasted off, rejoining Collins in orbit. Together, they returned to Earth, landing in the Pacific Ocean. They were greeted as heroes, but also as symbols of what collaboration, courage, and vision can achieve. The moon landing changed the world in ways that still matter today. It showed that when people work together, they can overcome even the most daunting challenges. It inspired generations of scientists, engineers, and dreamers. Many of the technologies developed for Apollo later became part of everyday life. Advances in computing, materials, and communication. But perhaps the most profound impact was psychological. For the first time, humans saw Earth from afar. A blue, fragile ball suspended in darkness. The famous photo, Earthrise, reminded people of our shared home and common destiny. It sparked environmental movements and a sense of global responsibility. Since then, 12 people have walked on the moon, all during the Apollo missions. No one has returned since 1972, but the legacy endures. Today, new missions are being planned. Countries around the world, private companies, and visionaries dream of returning, of building bases, of reaching for Mars and beyond. So, as you settle in tonight, let the story of the moon landing remind you of what's possible when we aim high, work together, and refuse to give up. The moon was once a distant dream, impossible to reach. But through determination, creativity, and courage, humans touched its surface. Imagine yourself looking up at the night sky. The moon glows quietly, as it always has, but now you know its secret. Footprints from Earth linger in its dust, silent witnesses to a moment when the impossible became real. Remember, the moon landing wasn't just about technology or politics, it was about people, ordinary and extraordinary, coming together to achieve something that had never been done. It was about courage in the face of uncertainty, resilience after tragedy, teamwork that spanned continents and cultures. Maybe tomorrow, you'll face a challenge that feels as impossible as reaching the moon. Let this story be your guide. Start with a clear vision, gather your team, prepare for setbacks, and when the moment comes, take that leap. The world is changed by those who dare to dream, and even more by those who act. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, carry with you the real story of the moon landing, a story of hope, humanity, and the quiet power of aiming higher than anyone thought possible. And if you ever feel small, remember that humans have touched the moon. We are capable of more than we know, especially when we reach together. Sleep well and dream big.